Hello, I'm Bhanu. It's wonderful to be here with you all today. I have been invited to give your commencement talk. It's right here in the form of a poem. It just burst out of me when Chuck invited me to do this. And of course, the reason I said yes is you. And by you, I mean the students who are graduating today. I had the extreme honour to start this journey with some of you 4 years ago. Hello, students of Diversity Seminar. Hello, students of Shrine, Ritual and Installation. Do you remember the day that Gina Adams came to our studio and asked us, "What do you burn to say?" I'll never forget that. And perhaps this poem is an attempt to answer that question, respond to that invitation in turn. The only other thing I think I should say before beginning is that there is a line from a poem called The Cure of Folly by Alejandra Pizarnik, in translation by Cecilia Rossi. So perhaps you can listen for that. Poem for the Last Day. This is your last day in this house. I'll omit the traditional ritual, a smudge of ash or scarlet powder on your face. I won't burn this curl of cedar or hand you a parcel of unleavened bread stuffed with potatoes and coriander for the long journey ahead. Instead, let's stand here together for the duration of this poem on the virtual threshold of a university founded by loser poets and thieves, as the society might have described them then. This is the last day. Take off your gold bangle and place it in the wooden bowl from Kashmir, the one carved with elephants, before you leave. When I left my home for the United States so long ago, that's what my father said. You won't need it where you're going. Don't draw attention to yourself. I thought he was teaching me modesty. No, he was teaching me the last thing he had to teach me: how to survive in the body I was in, how to move through a world that's not always survivable. What will you leave behind? In the West, we answer that question through excess, a sense of our belongings as detritus. In June, we think of a seminar we hated, dull as cakes, the professor droning on, and burn our notes in one spectacular secular ceremony, one bright flame. But writing this poem for you on a bright spring morning in the home I've returned to after 20 years, I'm wondering if perhaps my father was asking something else, to leave something precious at the door of the place I was leaving, something I loved, a gift for the ones who would live here after me. Poem for the last day. I'm not your father. I'm not your mother. I was your teacher. In that capacity, I have one last request. It's not a test. What is the jewel you might relinquish before the red and yellow door slams shut behind you? What did you learn that is no longer uniquely yours? Assignment: choose a campus, Nalanda, Paramita, Arapaho. Though these names don't belong to us, even as and when they perform our sense of place on appropriated ground. Slip a jewel from your finger a wrist, or the pocket of your heart and tuck it under the sycamore outside the Allen Ginsberg Library, or in another spot of your own choosing, a windowsill or shrine, this isn't mine assignment. Is this the moment you become an ancestor of the place you've already left? Discuss. Example 1. At Naropa, I learned so much about navigating mostly white space with my dignity and courage intact. At Naropa, I learned so much about trusting students to invert the curriculum and make it into art. At Naropa, I learned to say what needed to be said, no matter the cost, in the hours or years to follow. 3 jewels glinting in the mud. Did you find them? It's time to leave the house. Even the Buddha kicked off his frozen slippers, crystalline with tiny pearls, bleeping in the soft hide, exiting barefoot, as the story goes, setting his tiara aside. Because a poem for the last day is a poem for the first day too. You're leaving the house on a day when the world is sick as roses, death after death. Your labor in this context is attendance, the next to and with of loss you didn't ask for. Choose a day from the vast calendar. Today, for example. How will you hold back death? How will you stop death? Did your daily practice prepare you for this? Bones that give off an evil glow. Nothing is true, violent, unjust, crucial and pure. The day begins like any other day. Poem for the last day. We won't murmur, be careful. We won't shout, don't forget us when you go. We won't ask you to envision a world in which we experience each other as equal. It's too late to remind you who you are or what your gift might be. In the house we shared, each morning we boiled the chai on a makeshift stove, asking, what do you like? What do you prefer? That's over now. Pour the tea into the tall, wet grass. In your last semester, death came fast in the community we share and far beyond it. Death came fast to black bodies, brown bodies, Asian bodies, indigenous bodies, queer bodies, transgender bodies. The bodies of the vulnerable, the ones who couldn't hide what their bodies said without saying it. One day, death came fast to our neighbors and childhood friends. That day, I was on a Zoom with my colleagues in Chiapas, Johannesburg, North Carolina, and Vermont as part of the work I do now across difference, which does not resemble the work I did with you, even as and when I learned so much in your extreme company. That day, I wrote down what I heard as if they were instructions to break a communal curse. Don't cry louder than the bereaved, said Rudo. Listening becomes a political action when the hopes of the other person become part of my life as well, said Maria Estela. An injury to one is an injury to all, said Desmond. Sympathy is not enough. It takes a long time, said Matt, to envision what living looks like. What does it mean to wait, he continued, and to discern an invitation beyond our own desires. Saira, looked out a Zoom window in Northern California and paused for a long time before she said, "How do we envision a world in which we experience each other as equal, as fully human?" At that moment, my phone beeped and I looked down. It was Junior, former colleague, beloved friend. He's in town as the sirens pass, heading south. The world as sick as roses, death after death. Dear graduates, poetry has its limits, and so it's time to stop writing at the edge of what a home might be, where the doorway meets the street. May this day bring to an end all the shitty attempts to make ourselves feel better at the expense of others. May this day bring the possibility of becoming who you want to be in the body that you have. But now, it's time to go. Goodbye.